When Jessica showed up at my door, holding her 2 kids and looking like the world had just ended, I had no idea how much my life was about to change, and not in a good way. "It's just for a few months while we get back on our feet," she said, with tears in her eyes. Mike stood behind her, nodding along like he meant it. "We've lost everything, Natalie, you're our only hope." I'm Natalie. I was 29, living alone in a cozy 2-bedroom apartment I'd worked hard to afford. It wasn't just my home, it was my sanctuary. I work from home as a freelance graphic designer, and I had turned one of the rooms into the perfect home office. That space was where I focused, created, and earned my living. Now Jessica, my stepsister, and her family were asking to move in. "The kids can sleep in the office," she said casually, motioning toward little Emma, who was 4, and 6-year-old Tyler. "Mike and I will take the guest room. We won't be in your way at all." I glanced around my peaceful apartment, my drafting table by the window, my dual monitors on the desk, everything clean and organized just the way I needed. That room was not just space, it was how I paid my bills. "I work from home," I reminded her. "I really need that office to do my job." "You can work from the kitchen table, or your bedroom," Jessica replied, brushing it off like it didn't matter. "You don't need a whole room just for drawing." I swallowed my frustration. It wasn't just drawing, it was my business, my career, my income, but they looked so desperate. Jessica was crying, the kids clung to her legs, and Mike said all the right things. "It's temporary, just until we find jobs and get a place of our own." I should have asked more questions. Why couldn't they stay with Mike's parents? Why wait until the last minute to ask me, what was their actual plan? But instead, I said yes, because they were family, because I didn't want the kids to end up in a shelter, because Jessica had always been able to make me feel guilty, like I owed her something. They moved in 2 days later, and it became clear very quickly that "we've lost everything" was an exaggeration. They brought a mountain of stuff, clothes, toys, kitchen gadgets, even wall decor. I was already overwhelmed. The kids ran through the apartment non-stop, shouting and laughing while I tried to concentrate on work. Mike planted himself on the couch, scrolling through his phone, asking for the Wi-Fi password. Jessica, meanwhile, took over the kitchen like it was hers, rearranging cabinets and fixing things I never asked her to touch. Within the first week, my home felt like a storm had hit it. Every morning, I'd wake up to dishes in the sink, food left out, sticky counters, and crumbs everywhere. Jessica claimed she was too tired to clean after making dinner. My fridge became a mess of leftover containers and spilled juice. My art supplies, constantly moved. Every time I needed something for a client call, it was missing or buried. "The kids need space to do their homework," Jessica said when I found my drafting table pushed aside and covered in coloring books. "You can work in your bedroom, right?" Soon, even my bedroom wasn't safe. Jessica would barge in without knocking, usually needing me to watch the kids while she and Mike ran errands, which somehow always took hours. I'd be on Zoom calls while Emma drew on the walls and Tyler jumped on the bed. "We're job hunting," Mike would say when they got back, but they never had interviews, just shopping bags and fresh manicures. My grocery bill tripled. They never pitched in a cent. Jessica always had an excuse. "We're saving for our new place," she'd say, yet she had no problem spending on salon visits and fancy coffees. "Family helps family," she told me. "Remember when our parents were married? We used to share everything." But I remembered things differently. I remembered Jessica taking over everything then too, just like she was now. When I finally asked her to stop moving my things, she rolled her eyes. "You're just being dramatic. This is how normal families live. You're just not used to it because you live like a hermit." The word temporary became a joke. They made no real effort to move out. Every time I brought it up, they had another excuse. "The rental market is impossible. The kids need stability. We just need a bit more time." Meanwhile, my work suffered. I missed deadlines. Clients started to complain. My reputation, something I'd built over years, was slipping away. Then came the final straw. One Tuesday, I left for a few hours to work at a nearby cafe, just to get some peace and finish a project. When I came back, I opened the door and froze. My living room was unrecognizable. The drafting table was gone. My monitors were shoved to the side. In their place were bright plastic bins, shelves filled with toys, and a colorful rug. "Surprise," Jessica said cheerfully. "We made the kids a play area. Doesn't it feel more open now?" Where's my drafting table? I asked, my voice flat. Oh, we moved it to storage. You're always on your laptop anyway. No permission, no discussion, just gone. Those big monitors are so ugly, she added. We should really. Don't touch my equipment, I said, louder than I expected. This is my home, my office, my workspace. It's our home now, Mike said from the couch, eyes still on his phone. Family shares, Jessica added. You can't expect kids to be cooped up all day. They need room to play. And I need a quiet place to work, I snapped. This isn't a daycare, this is my livelihood. Jessica's expression turned sour. You're being selfish, Natalie, after everything we've done. Everything you've done, I shot back. You've taken over my apartment, you've disrupted my work, you've ignored every boundary I've tried to set. We're family. No, you're freeloaders, you haven't looked for jobs, you haven't saved money, you haven't helped with anything, you've just taken. Emma started crying. Jessica hugged her tightly and gave me a look like I was the monster. Let's go, sweetie, she whispered loudly. Aunt Natalie doesn't want to share anymore. I watched them disappear into the guest room, and something in me broke. This wasn't kindness. This wasn't family. This was manipulation. This was disrespect. This was theft of my peace, my space, my life. And I was done. Part 3, Segment 1, 6 months later. 6 months after they were finally out of my apartment, life looked very different for me, and in the best way possible. My business was thriving. The peace and quiet of my new place made all the difference. I could focus again, finish projects early, and even raise my rates. Clients noticed how much better my work was, and soon, I had more projects than I could handle, so I hired a virtual assistant to help with the emails and scheduling. Everything just flowed. No screaming kids, no messes in the kitchen, no one barging into my room during Zoom calls. I could walk from my clean bedroom to my calm, organized office and start my day with a cup of coffee in silence. It was a kind of peace I hadn't known I needed until it came back to me. Jessica and Mike, on the other hand, hadn't landed quite as softly. According to Aunt Susan, who still liked to keep tabs on everyone, they'd moved 3 times since leaving my place. First, they stayed at Mike's parents' house, after swearing it was impossible to live with them, but apparently, having no other choice made things a lot more possible. Then they bounced around a couple of cheap rentals, but the stories were always the same. The landlord was rude, the neighbors were loud, the place was too small, always someone else's fault. Turns out, not everyone was willing to be walked all over the way I had been. Jessica had even asked Aunt Susan if they could move in with her. She said they'd changed. Susan told me one afternoon over coffee, said they'd learned to respect people's space and wouldn't overstay their welcome. I laughed and shook my head. That's exactly what she told me, right before she turned my office into a daycare. The only good news in all of it was about the kids. Mike's parents had stepped in to provide some much-needed stability. They insisted on keeping Emma and Tyler during the week so they could stay in the same school. Jessica and Mike only had them on weekends now. It wasn't perfect, but at least the kids had a routine again. As for me, my new apartment was everything I had hoped for. I set up a real home office this time, with better lighting, a bigger desk, and a separate area where I could meet clients over video calls. Everything had a place. Nothing ever got reorganized without my knowledge. I finally felt like I had control again. Then, one morning, I got an email I didn't expect. It was from Jessica. Subject: Hey. I've been doing a lot of thinking. Maybe we didn't handle things the best way when we stayed with you. We were going through a rough time, but that's no excuse for taking advantage. I see that now. The kids miss you. Would you consider meeting for coffee? It wasn't exactly an apology, but it was the closest thing to one I'd ever seen from her. Still, something about the message felt off. I called Mike's mother, someone I never thought I'd bond with, but over the months, she'd become something of an ally. Oh, they just got evicted again, she told me matter-of-factly. Jessica's been calling everyone in the family, trying to find a place to crash. Don't fall for it. And there it was, the real reason for the sudden message. Still, I didn't want to leave her completely unheard, so I replied. I'm glad you've gained this perspective. I hope it helps you make better choices in the future. But I'm not interested in meeting right now. I thought that was the end of it. But less than 5 minutes later, she replied. We've really changed. And we found this great apartment, but we need help with the deposit. Just a small loan, we'll pay you back right away. For the kids' sake. There it was, the truth behind the email. The so-called apology wasn't about regret, it was about money, again. I didn't bother replying. This time, I didn't need to explain myself, I didn't owe anyone anything, not an explanation, not a meeting, and definitely not a loan. Not anymore.